Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
Welcome once again to Faith on Trial, where we examine the influence of law in society on people of faith. I'm Deacon Mike Mano here in the radio studio with Gina No, our co-host. Gina, how are you this morning? There's snow on the ground here.
There is. Yeah. It's like Christmas out there. I love it.
Yeah.
Everything's coated. It's all white and clean and crisp.
Yeah.
It's a little cold for me.
And there's not too much of it. That's the important. There's not too much of it.
Enough to make the roads a little iffy,
Yeah,
I imagine.
a little iffy. Yeah.
So we have a good show today. Who do we have?
We have Matt Lamb, our favorite college reporter from the College Fix. He's the associate editor there, and he's going to talk to us about what we're doing today. Is we're looking at what's coming ahead, and he's going to talk about a little bit about what's coming on college campuses in the next few years, and then
I've noticed things are changing.
They are
changing. The news
changing.
has quite a few stories about Board of Regents and administrations making some changes on the college campuses.
That's right. And then Thomas Ulp, who is the executive vice president of the Thomas More Society, he's going to talk about lawfare and what's going on with the new Justice Department, how that may affect some of these constitutional and pro-religious freedom efforts that we have going on right now. And he's at the Thomas More Society.
You know, I don't think there's been a year that we've been on this show that the Thomas More Society hasn't been representing someone or some case at the Supreme Court.
Yes.
They are, and winning.
Yeah.
We have a lot to be thankful for with the Thomas More Society and being able to express ourselves and our religious faith publicly.
That's right. We have a lot to be thankful for with them, and so we're going to wrap up the legal portion of this program, however many years we've been on now, with the Thomas More Society. So,
I love that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a prayer to open this up with?
I do. I have a prayer for peace today. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of this earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred, and strengthen us all in hope. Give us the wisdom and the courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among the nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Gina. We will be right back after these messages with Matt Lamb, the associate editor for the College Fix. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we're back. You're still listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network, and we have with us as one of our final guests, Matt Lamb, who is the associate editor of the College Fix. Matt, how are you doing these days?
Good. Thank you for having me back on and having me on over the past couple of years.
Oh, and you've been a valuable addition to the program, and we're glad to see that now that we're kind of fading away here in the dust of history, that you're going on to the network. You got a gig with Teresa Tomeo now.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and thank you for that.
Certainly.
Congratulations.
We didn't do anything to get you on there. You did it all yourself. But,
good work. Yep.
All we did is provide you, I think, with a phone number or an email or something like that, and you did the rest of it yourself. And I think that's very good. I heard the interview, and I thought you did a very good job, just as you always do here whenever you're on. We're looking ahead right now because not only are we leaving the air, but we've got an administration that and everything that's been going on the last 4 years that we're going to be putting behind us shortly. We've got a new administration coming in. We kind of have a new feeling in the country right now. So from your point of view as somebody who has their finger on the pulse of what's going on in college campuses, What are we looking in academia in the coming years?
Absolutely. Well, first I'll say that, I've been on Ed Martin's show before, and he was picked for the Trump administration. So that might be a good sign for you guys if that's something
We've not received a call from Mar-a-Lago yet, but we are waiting. I think Gina and I would love to do that thing, the Vatican, ambassador to the Vatican. We could learn Italian real quick, couldn't we?
At least for a year or two. Yes.
I think that'd be good. Have fun over in Rome, yeah.
I think looking at higher education for next year, certainly Donald Trump coming back to the White House will change how some universities operate. We can see that the universities that have been overtly political for years, but certainly under the Biden administration, maybe more so, they're sort of dialing back, at least saying they're going to embrace institutional neutrality and sort of step back from politicization, because that sort of puts them in the target of President Donald Trump, Department of Education, Department of Justice. So I think that will happen. But even if President Trump wasn't reelected for the second or third time, I think we did see a trend unrelated of students deciding not to go straight into four-year colleges. I saw something from DeWalt, which is a tool maker, so take this study for what it's worth, but saying that there's a waiting list for a lot of trade programs, and that freshman enrollment at four-year colleges is down, but there is also an increase at two-year colleges. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be the cost of education. It could be that those community colleges offer more career-specific programs. You go and get a one-year certificate as a truck driver, or one-year certificate as a machinist, or a 6-month program to learn this skill. And so that was happening really regardless of Trump or Biden. I do think that Trump's general posture towards promoting trade schools, promoting alternative education, may encourage that, but that trend's already going on of students, high schoolers deciding that they don't want to necessarily go straight into a four-year college after graduation.
Yeah, I know. I've been an advocate of that for some time, and I'm somebody who taught college, so it may be surprising to hear that. But I remember my wife it took a year or so off between high school and going to college, and she enjoyed that time, and I think it helped round her out quite a bit, and I would imagine it would. I think a lot of the young people that are going into these two-year colleges, some of them are going for trades purposes, but I know in my work in academia, the community college didn't always have an articulation agreement with the major universities around. They just accepted all their classes. And the result is that somebody who's getting out of high school that doesn't really know what he wants to do just yet can dabble around in a community college and get really his first 2 years of a four-year degree out of the way. And no matter what he takes, pretty much it's all going to transfer to a major college or university.
Yeah, it does seem like universities and community colleges are doing a better job of aligning their different requirements, and college might be right for some people. So I have a friend who, out of high school, he joined the Navy. I think he's in the Navy for about 7 years, decided he didn't want to do that. He had sort of served his time, decided he was ready to try the next thing. Tried work, I think, as like a plumber for about a year, so he's an apprenticeship. But because some injuries and some things from when he was in the Navy, that wasn't a viable path. So he decided to go to a local four-year college, which is affordable, and I don't want to say it's like a community college, but it wasn't a big. Anyways, he has the GI Bill, so right. I don't think he's paying for it. And so he served his time, served his country. That's great. Tried a trade, decided it wasn't right for him, and now he's studying business. And what's great is he's studying business, but he has this experience, as a 20-year-old helping oversee maintenance of a Navy ship. And so he has some, practical sort of operations experience, and he's learned those skills. And I think he's actually a good influence, I'm sure, on some of the younger students, because he was sharing that they asked him, well, how do you do so well in school? And he said, well, I I read the books. I study. If I don't know something, I go ask the professor, or I go ask I go to the tutoring center and I get some help. Just those sort of basic skills that you need beyond school. If you don't know what to do, who do you ask for help, and how do you practice, and how do you get better at your craft?
I had a student one time who was in my class. She never missed a class. She had several classes from me, never missed a class. And she came to me one day and she had a request. She'd like to miss the next week's class. And I asked her why. And she said, well, she had to go to an honors banquet. And I got to thinking, now here was a gal that never missed a class, sat in on every lecture, wrote everything down, took good notes, and now she feels bad because she has to miss a class to go to an honors luncheon. I thought that was kind of unique, and it said a lot about her. And we all know people that have gone directly from high school into the military. I know one who went into the Marines and then decided to go to Ohio State, and now he's going to be vice president of the United States. So not going to college immediately out of high school is not an impediment to your career.
Oh, by no means. In fact, the Manhattan Institute just had a report that came out that looked at the college degrees of state leaders, so attorneys general, governors, various university official or government officials, and actually most of them did not go to Harvard or Princeton. We sort of think of the Supreme Court. I think everyone besides Justice Amy Coney Barrett went to Yale or Harvard for law school. And even
now we know what's wrong with the courts, right?
Yeah,
blame Yale and Harvard.
As I think it was Bill Buckley said, I'd rather be governed by the first 100 people in the Boston phone book than the faculty at Harvard.
Yeah.
And that's still true today as much as when he said it decades ago. I don't think you necessarily – I actually have a friend who I worked with at Turning Point USA. He was he was homeschooled, never went to college, and now he's actually a state representative in Ohio. He's just sort of always stayed involved in politics, had this marketing firm he ran with another one of our friends, and just sort of stayed involved as a volunteer, county GOP, and now he's a state representative. And I think he probably brings a unique perspective to issues that, maybe the lawyers and doctors don't necessarily have.
Well, we as lawyers, I got to speak up for the lawyers here. We bring a lot of ideas. Some of them aren't very good, but we bring a lot of ideas. But you're right about one thing, and that's that the people that show up at the legislature that are from the working trades usually have a different perspective on the government and perhaps more helpful to the average person than somebody who is a degreed professional.
Yeah, and I do think, if you look at the trends of college, I think it will necessarily change that our representatives in 10 or 15 or 20 years won't necessarily all have, fancy law degrees or MBAs, because as more and more people choose to go into trades or get specific certificates or go to their local state college that's much cheaper, those people eventually, a certain amount of them will have to become our political leaders. And, I hope people are seeing this. I think of, my cousin went to a public university for his undergrad and did one of those 5-year BA, MA programs in accounting. And he works now at one of the top 4 accounting firms in the country, because you learn the same things in accounting at your local state school that you do at Harvard. There's really, with accounting, as far as I can understand, it's sort of the set rules. Maybe if you want to be the top auditor for Google, you need to have a lot of advanced degrees. But numbers are numbers wherever you go. So I think for a lot of those degrees, they're interchangeable. So you might as well get the much cheaper one, unless you can get a full ride at a private school, and that's nothing wrong with that either. And
there's nothing wrong with taking advantage of the GI Bill too. Gina?
Of course. That's a good program, and that's, I think, a completely fair way to pay back the people who, risk their lives, or at least were willing to risk their lives if called upon.
It seems a lot more fair than eliminating your debt when you at the cost of the taxpayers after you get out of college. Hey, Matt, you talk about the trend towards trade schools, and it makes me wonder, will we see some of this liberal arts college ideology, DEI, racism, cultural Marxism, that kind of thing? Will we see some of that trickling down into the trade schools? Will those individuals like to bleed their ideology into our entire education system?
It's certainly possible, because we have seen that there's effort sometimes to inject this DEI into STEM, into chemistry or physics. So it's certainly possible. I think for now, the type of student who wants to go to a trade school has a specific end in mind, and so they may not be as tolerable to DEI. And I mean, sort of, they want to do this 18-month program because they feel like they do want to be an electrician, or they want to be a welder, or they want to be an installer. If they see in the course curriculum that, there's going to be, you got to take 6 credits on white privilege, then they might not be as willing to enroll. Certainly it's possible that, since a lot of these programs are run through community colleges, and community colleges can be infected just as much with DEI as a 4-year university, it's plausible. I think that if the trade schools are smart, they will resist it, because once they'll see that sort of DEI has ruined a lot of universities, and I think contributes to the reason people are not choosing to go to those 4-year universities, and that 4-year universities, some of them are rolling back their diversity statements and their DEI staff in some way or another.
I've seen that in the news recently. Right. Michigan stands out.
And a lot of these places where people go for a trade education are from trade unions, and they're placed someplace, and they are paid while they go through their journeyman status, whatever they call it at the time, and that's, you come out of that with no debt, with a surplus. And I'm not sure you got too many people that are working in a plumber's union that is teaching this to their trade apprentices that are worried about socialism, or worried about, DEI, or worried about equity and inclusion and all this other stuff. I think they're more interested in making sure that the pipes work right and the water flows properly.
True meritocracy.
That's right.
You want the best to excel and succeed.
That's right. I want to go back to the college campuses for a minute and ask you, Matt, about anti-Semitism. That we've seen that relatively rampant on college campuses recently. Where do you see this going in the next year or so?
I think it will continue to be a problem. I think one of the biggest issues that colleges need to confront is that there are federal laws, including the First Amendment, that protects a certain amount of speech, and that's good. And then also there are federal laws that prohibit harassment on a variety of protected identities, including religion and race, which being Jewish is really both. So I think that's an issue. I mean, it's tough. So the president of Harvard recently said that, we need to strongly discourage certain kinds of speech, and he said anti-Semitism, but then he also said hate speech, which can be very broadly defined. What I think would be great, and I'm sure some colleges are doing this, is if the university leaders, instead of sort of trying to play both sides, I mean, they obviously want to make sure Jewish students feel protected. They also want to make sure their students who are pro-Palestine, who may have legitimate reasons to be critical of Israel, that I think, and I've said this before, I think there needs to be more of a coming together on campus, and maybe an understanding that at Harvard, at Northwestern, at wherever, the conflict in Israel and Palestine is not going to be solved in Evanston, Illinois. So as much as maybe the pro-Palestinian students think that boycott, divestment, and sanctions or tent cities will solve the problem in Israel and Palestine, it's not going to happen. And so what I would like to see university leaders do, if the DEI team is worth anything, now would be the time for them to step up. If it's all about inclusion, is bring together pro-Israel students, pro-Palestinian students, other students who just are kind of wondering what exactly is going on here, and bring them together to find some sort of peace on campus. I think probably both sides have legitimate reasons to feel like they're being targeted maybe on campus, that maybe their family is being targeted in the Middle East. But we also have to help students learn how to get along with one another, because when these students graduate, some of them may be able to work for a political group or Congress or something. But if you are a pro-Palestinian student and you're going to go work for an accounting firm, or you're a pro-Israel student and you're going to go, work for an engineering firm, you have to be able to get along with people you work with who hold different political views, which is just the same for pro-life and pro-choice and pro-LGBT and conservative Catholics and conservative Protestants. And so I think the more the colleges can foster this skill of talking to people who hold different views on very important issues, I don't want to undermine the very important concerns. I think that will be most beneficial to the college campus.
I'm looking around at the current Congress as you mentioned this, and I'm thinking one name stands out right now to me, and that's Fetterman, Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania. How he got kind of got off with a rough start, having the stroke and everything, and coming to the Senate kind of partially disabled by that. But he's really starting to sound like a person that can embrace both sides of an argument and understand and not back off his beliefs, but at least understand what the other side is saying. And it seems to me he's made a number of overtures toward the conservatives in Congress that's going to stand him well in his tenure in the Senate.
It's a great point because, he still is pro-abortion, pro-LGBT, but if you just say a few things that people at least feel like you understand where they're coming from. I don't know who. It's some quote about people will care what you have to say. People care what you know when they know that you care, right? Which is kind of a cliche, but it's actually true. Sometimes cliches are cliches because there's some truth to it. I have this book I'm looking at right now on my shelf called Getting to Yes. I think it was by some Harvard business professors about negotiation. But the basic message is, both sides have to come together. And so on a college campus, well, what do Jewish and, Palestinian students want? I think they want to feel that they're on a campus where they're not going to be harassed on the basis of their views, which are very much tied into their religion. I don't think we can ignore that it's ultimately a conflict between Judaism and Islam. I think they want to go to school and learn and get a degree so they can get a career and all that. That's sort of the purpose of higher education. And so I think the more universities can come together, and this would be a great way for, the professors who are always told are the experts to really use their expertise. It would be great to get some theology professors, philosophy professors, communications, business communications professors to find a way to create a sense of belonging, not in some sort of, kumbaya way, but helping 18, 19, and 20-year-olds learn how to act like adults. And frankly, sometimes adults don't know how to act like adults. But the more they can create those skills, they'll create value for their students and also have peace on the campus. And
as they're getting those people together, they want to make sure to leave the lawyers out, right?
Yeah. No, lawyers usually, they don't. The thing about consultants, right, is that they make money. If you can't solve the problem, you can make money prolonging it.
You can make money off of it. Yeah, that's right. All right, we're coming to the end of our time here, but I want to go to the College Fix, and I want to talk about the College Fix a little bit and how people, potential students, can get involved in the College Fix, and what is it you do, and how you work with the students that are working with you.
Yeah, so the collegefix.com, we were started around 2010, and our main goal is to train college students to report on higher education news and then to help aspiring journalists, generally on the center-right political spectrum, to go into careers in journalism. So I think we've had a very successful track record so far. We have people that work at the Washington Examiner, Fox News, USA Today, maybe more of interest to your listeners, EWTN, First Things, National Review. And so our main job is just creating this next generation of journalists, particularly conservative, libertarian, traditionalists, and anywhere sort of on the center right. We're very much big tent in that way.
Yeah, we've talked many times, and every time I get off the phone with you, I think what I would have enjoyed out of the college fix when I was studying journalism at Creighton. It would have been a great opportunity for me. And so I encourage that if you are a student that is going to college or a parent of a student that's going to college, you might want to steer them toward the College Fix, and that is thecollegefix.com. And if anybody wants to find out what's going on college campuses, that's where you can look at, too, and find out what Matt and his colleagues there are putting out and keep you in touch with what's going on the campuses. Matt, it's always been a joy to have you with us, and you've been here a number of times, and this will be our last time, at least for a while, visiting with you, and we appreciate your time and everything and the education that you've given us, and we wish you and the College Fix well. God bless you, and we will speak again someday.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye. We're going to take a short break right now, and when we come back, we'll have another guest. We'll be talking about what's going on in the legal profession in the next couple of years. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we're back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we have Thomas Hope, who is the Executive Vice President of the Thomas More Society, with us right now. Talk about maybe the state of the judiciary as we move forward into the next administration in the next year. So, Thomas, first of all, welcome to the program. We're happy to have you back. We must have treated you nice before, otherwise you wouldn't have come back. So we're happy to have you.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me, and I know that we've, participated in your radio program before, and we're happy to do that, especially to help explain the various different cases and issues that we see out there in the area of the First Amendment, free speech, and freedom of religion.
Very good. Well, that's what we want to talk about. Where are we going? You guys have been kind of in the forefront with this religious liberty defense and defending pro-lifers, defending free speech. That's all been under attack for at least the last 4 years now. But the administration is going to be changing in about a month. And will that bring needed changes to the justice system? Will that bring needed changes to what you are doing? Is it going to eliminate the need for a Thomas More Society to be out there on every street corner almost defending people's religious liberty? Or is it going to get worse some places? Are we just shifting from the federal government to the state government?
Yeah, they're all very good questions and observations. I would suggest that the work of the Thomas More Society will not be diminishing. We're happy with the fact that the Biden administration is going to be over and that Trump is going to take over, primarily, or a very important reason being that Trump appointed good conservative traditional judicial judges and justices. As you know, the justices of the Supreme Court came out with the Dobbs decision that reversed the Roe v. Wade regime, at least in federal constitutional law. And we hope that in the new administration, that trend will continue, that good conservative judges will be appointed. It's just so important that happen. For an example, in New York, I personally had a case involving sidewalk counselors, which involved the application of a prior injunction. Our clients were new on the scene. our contention was they weren't subject to the injunction. But Letitia James stepped in and argued that we were. We filed a lawsuit, and we waited 3 years in the Second Circuit for a decision that vindicated our position. It was a 2-1 decision, and the two judges who ruled in our favor were appointed by President Trump. The one judge that opposed it and filed a dissent was appointed by President Obama. So that's a stark example of how important the judicial appointments are. In my opinion, the case was open and shut. It was very easy to decide, and yet because of the abortion distortion that's been so prevalent in our country, it took that amount of effort to reach the right decision. So with good conservative traditional judges who are looking at things in a fair way.
Let's talk about a minute about the appointment of justices and judges. There was a push on by the Democrats to get as many Biden judges appointed as possible. But they ran into a problem with the Republicans, and they apparently have an agreement where the Democrats can bring up all the district judges they want for a vote, but they're not going to bring up any appellate justices for a vote. This seems to be working in favor of the Republicans for doing that, and the conservatives. Do we happen to know how many appellate vacancies there are these days?
I don't know. There's no shortage of them. There's plenty of vacancies. I don't know the exact number. The appellate courts are the most important, right? Because it's the Court of Appeal that makes the decision and requires the lower court, the federal court, lower court, district court, to comply with it. The courts of appeal are subject to the Supreme Court. So those are the most important positions.
And in many respects, they set the parameters as the case is going up to the Supreme Court.
Right, mm-hmm. Right. It's a system where the issues percolate, in the district court and then at the Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court then usually stands in as a mediator and arbitrator among the contentions of the various different circuit courts, of which there are 11, I believe, mm-hmm. and including a federal Court of Appeals. So that's a good decision by the Supreme Court is important. We have, and a good example of that is a case we have before the U.S. Supreme Court now on bubble zones. It's coming out of Carbondale, Illinois.
Yeah, this is where you protect people within a certain radius of an abortion clinic. You can't speak to them or whatever.
Back in 2000, in a case called Hill v. Colorado, Justice Stevens, in a very conflicted court, upheld what they call a bubble zone, which is it's a 16-foot circle around any woman coming into an abortion clinic, and a person who wants to counsel that woman can't come any closer than, it's an 8-foot radius, right? So 16 feet total in diameter, but can't come in that space without her permission. And that is a restriction on free speech. And on the sidewalk, normally that would be considered a violation of the First Amendment, because the public sidewalks have always been the primary venue for political speech and demonstration, picketing, etc. And so here in 2000, there was a restriction on advocacy pertaining to abortion. And since then, it's been very much criticized. And Justice Alito in the Dobbs case, even brought it up and said this is an example of abortion distortion in the law. Abortion, meaning that abortion seems to have this warping effect on normal constitutional principles, and that's one of them. And that was cited by Justice Alito, and one that we're trying to get back into the proper perspective. In other words, reverse that Hill v. Colorado precedent. And we've tried before in 2020 with a case out of Chicago, because what happens is the Hill v. Colorado ordinance in Colorado is then repeated throughout the country. And so they did it in Carbondale, they did it here in Chicago, they're trying to do it in Detroit, down in Florida, Clearwater, Florida, and San Diego. So unless you try to prevent that from happening, it starts to proliferate. So we have a case before the Supreme Court asking the Supreme Court to reverse that precedent. It's so important, that the justices are looking at the principles fairly and objectively. Otherwise, these precedents just continue on.
Yeah,
so that's an example of how the judicial appointments are extremely important.
And what I've seen is a lot of times when a higher court will strike down a ruling like this bubble zone ordinance, somebody else will have their own ordinance and still continue to enforce it because the case didn't directly relate to them, they claim, and so they're exempt from it, or in some cases they don't know.
Right, they might tweak the ordinance, but an interesting twist in the Carbondale case, which is before the Supreme Court right now on a petition for cert, is that Carbondale, when they saw what we were doing, they repealed their ordinance in hopes of saying, well, this is a moot case. But as you can see, if the localities can moot out a case simply by reversing, then that doesn't really help anything. Any other municipality or city could basically take the chance of getting it through without a challenge. It makes it even more important that these things be challenged, because if they're not challenged, they just leave them in there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's an important issue. Many issues, though, are that we get involved in are at the state level. Now, they could have involve a federal claim, in which case we would be in the federal court, but some are also in the state courts. The Trump appointment, and he has the right to name federal judges, but not state judges. So we have the same issue in the state, that issues come up that are important, and we try to assert federal constitutional rights so we can get those into federal court, but can't always do that.
Okay. Now, when obviously you're correct, most litigation is done in the state level as opposed to in the federal level. But how does having a new Department of Justice, or a new head of the Department of Justice, is that going to affect the legal jurisprudence in these areas, not only in the federal but in the state courts? Because the state courts are going to have to ultimately follow certain federal precedents.
Well, they certainly have to follow the federal Constitution.
Right. And,
the Justice Department hopefully will stop engaging in what is termed lawfare and, kind of a skewed interpretation of the law, forcing changes that the progressives in the Biden administration wanted. One of the things we've been doing since Dobbs, and it's because of the Biden administration, is defending defendants, pro-life and pro-religious defendants in FACE cases. That's the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances law. The FACE case was passed in 1994, and in Clinton's first term, and it federalized efforts by pro-life counselors to counteract the abortion mentality in this country. The FACE Act provides federal penalties and criminal penalties too. And following Dobbs, Bush tried to, show that he was doing something. So he ordered his Justice Department to start bringing FACE prosecutions. And they went back in time, like in the Marr case, what the local authorities declined to even prosecute because it was so minor. The Justice Department turned into a federal lawsuit and applied a conspiracy, the Ku Klux Klan Act conspiracy law, to try and get major jail time for people who block access to abortion clinics. We don't, recommend that be done because it's against the law. But
it was interesting that the FACE Act also protects pro-life pregnancy centers, and yet they're not enforcing it against people that are blocking entrances.
That's right. There was quite a spate of violence and property destruction in the aftermath of the Dobbs case against pregnancy centers, and there were few, if any, corrective responses to that by the Justice Department. So anyway, the Thomas More Society decided to get involved with defending these FACE Act defendants, and we're in the process of filing pardon requests for these individuals, and because President Trump is aware of these prosecutions and has said that he wants to do something about that. So with a new Justice Department, we're going to see the end of that, hopefully, the end of those FACE Act prosecutions. And we're also working legislatively in Congress to encourage the Congress to repeal the FACE Act on the grounds that it doesn't involve any regulation of commerce. It's totally based upon the religious exercise of religious conviction and free speech. So whether that will happen, I don't know, but there are some congressmen and senators like Chip Roy who is interested in that too. So we're hoping that can happen. In any event, with the Justice Department, we hope that they'll stop those really egregious FACE prosecutions and will, enforce the laws so that religious freedom is protected, respected, and the law is administered fairly.
Yeah, and maybe stop these pre-dawn raids on pro-lifers' houses.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. What an egregious offense in our country.
Yeah. Well, the Marr situation, you guys won in court.
Right. We won.
Yeah.
But that was what you say is exactly right. Our attorney, Matt Heffron, out in Omaha, had contacted the Justice Department because he represented Mark Houck and said, hey, we'll have Mark come in if you want. But the Justice Department, they didn't want that. They wanted some kind of photo op. And so they sent their troops in with loaded, weapons and plucked him out of his house and arrested him, which was, just egregious, and all for show, right?
Yeah.
Because Mark is not a violent guy at all.
No.
What happened with him was an altercation with a clinic escort who was bothering Mark
and his son.
And his son.
And they were half a block away from the clinic when the altercation occurred.
So there's no way the FACE Act even applied there, and luckily a jury exonerated Mark, and so we're happy. We were happy to get involved with that case because Mark was so much put upon by the Justice Department lawfare.
Yeah. Gina?
You talk about Mark's case, and I, through the process and the years over this programming, I've realized that sometimes it's not it's the process that's the punishment rather than the outcome of any court case. Would you say that that's predominantly what's going on in a lot of these Space Act cases?
That what is happening?
That it's the process. It's the adjudication. It's the raiding of the home and delivering of the charges and dragging out the misery.
It's all for show.
Right. Well, and for kind of a punishment, right? To kind of discourage other people from taking, doing their conducting themselves in a constitutionally correct way.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and Mark is considering a lawsuit against the Justice Department if he hasn't already filed it for the way in which they went about, arresting him. As I mentioned, he was perfectly willing to come in and talk to them and do what they wanted, but they didn't. That wasn't good enough for them.
Yeah, when you've got a non-violent defendant, it's I think in the criminal justice system, it's fairly common that the attorney offers to just surrender his client, and that's what was happening with Mark Hulk, as they were offering really to surrender him, for his arraignment, but they didn't do that. They instead raided his house.
Right. They wanted something to apparently show on TV that he was such a bad guy, but pretty much backfired because Mark, as he was able to demonstrate in his trial, is not that way at all.
Are we looking perhaps at the end of lawfare?
Well, hopefully so. Hopefully
hasn't seemed to work.
Trump won't engage in that, right?
Yeah. Well, Trump won in spite of it, so I think that is
right.
kind of the death knell for it. But
of course, the Democratic message was if you elect Trump, he'll totally be involved with lawfare.
Of course,
so hopefully he'll realize that that's not good for our country.
Yeah, well, Trump was a Nazi. That's what they were telling us. So. Anyway,
right.
But it looks like we may have a little bit better future in the legal realm here in the next couple of years than we have had. At least a better playing field.
Well, right. Certainly on a federal level, and to the extent we were happy to work with the first Trump administration. They had regulators who were. They were sympathetic to religious freedom, and they were looking for ways to level the playing field, so to speak, for people of faith in this country. And so we're looking forward to continuing to work with Trump's administration in that regard. We got nowhere with
Biden.
Biden.
And we should mention that what you do for your clients, you do pro bono. So there's a place if somebody's interested in this that you can donate some of your spare change. If you have any spare change after 4 years of Biden, you can send it up to Thomas More Society because they're putting it to good use. And their website is thomasmoresociety.org, where you can find out what they are doing and where you can make a difference, perhaps. You can see what Tom and all the other attorneys are doing there, and get some good information from that site.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, we do all our work pro bono, so and that's a good thing because people of conscience, people who are out on the sidewalk, people who work at pregnancy centers, people who are taking a position of conscience, are oftentimes not. They don't have pockets full of money.
Mark Hulk couldn't have afforded his defense, I don't believe.
That's right. That's typical of the people we represent. I and all the attorneys who work here are proud to represent the people that come to us, because they're people who stand up, have backbone, they have consciences, they are standing up for a high value, and they're what they call martyrs, right? Witnesses to the truth. And we need those people in this country. Okay. We need to support them. We run interference for those people because they're standing up and they get whacked by the powers
system.
That be in so many cases.
Well, Thomas,
so we're here to defend them.
We're out of time right now, so thank you very much for joining us on our last guest program here. And we certainly appreciate it. And again, we send people to your site all the time, thomasmoresociety.org. If you can help them out, help them out. If not, you can pray for them. And if you know somebody that needs help, there's a place to go. Thomas Ulf, who is the Executive Vice President of the Thomas More Society, thank you very much for joining us today, and God bless you.
Yes, thank you, Mike and Gina. I wish you good luck and hope you'll continue your good efforts here in this publicizing what needs to be publicized to the country here.
Thank you very much. Certainly appreciate it, and we will be right back after these messages with our wrap-up. And we're back. You're still listening to Faith on Trial, the Iowa Catholic Radio Network, and interesting show as usual to really end our run.
Two of my very favorites, although I think they're always my favorites. Yeah. But you know what? Thomas pointed something out to us today that kind of sums up something I hadn't recognized in all the programming that we've done, that our constitutional rights in a lot of these court cases have a different leaning when abortion is involved.
Right.
If abortion isn't involved, Americans have like certain constitutional rights that seem to be understood very clearly. But once you add the variable of abortion, either clinic or a procedure or a pregnancy center, all of a sudden they're fungible. They're manipulative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they change.
They shouldn't. And I think that's
a shapeshifter. Like you see in the spooky movies and that. Yeah.
So I'm going to look at some of these cases from a different viewpoint as we move forward.
Yeah, and of course, Matt was good as always with his viewpoint about what's going on college campuses. Those of you out there who are considering college or have a child that's considering college and might want to take part in what the College Fix does, please contact them, collegefix.com, and send your students there if they can. I know I would have appreciated that when I was a journalism student.
Well, it's good to be published. I think it's helpful in a lot of cases.
It is.
Unless you have an opinion that might be out there, just like social media.
That's right.
Be a little leery about publishing some things.
All right. Well, that's it for now. Let's end with our Defender's Prayer. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. That's it for this week. We'll be back again next week with our very last program. Till then, make sure you go to church and take your kids.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial, with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.